Hello and welcome to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson, and with me is Brian Jackson. We are the aforementioned Brothers in Tech. Brian, how you doing today?
Brothers in Tech. I'm good, Alan. How are you?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. So ready to get back together and talk a little technology here. Again, our show is this ongoing podcast discussion where we're trying to help reach out to either those of you in your families that are the default go-to IT person, and maybe you want to be part of our brotherhood. You want to help share thoughts and resources with us as we try to help. Come join us as we try to help everybody around us manage their home and family technology. Or, as I like to say too, maybe you are that one of those family members that find yourself calling that other family member the IT person to help out, and you want to become a little more self-sufficient. You want to start to know some of this yourself. That's what we're here to help with, really focusing on home and more family-related technologies that are things that everybody's interested in today. We want to help you understand it and apply it and use it in your own situation.
Yeah.
So, Brian, we've been doing this for a few months now. We've been having some great fun topics. I think we've been having a good time talking about some different aspects of technology. But in all of this, we were probably a little remiss in that we really didn't spend any time talking about the actual true computers, the actual devices, the actual things that people are going to use to pull off a lot of this technology stuff we've been talking about.
That was kind of a big admission, wouldn't it? You know, we kind of skipped a big part of this whole deal. So, I think I enjoy the fact that we were able to jump into some very specific things, but it's funny how each of those topics, we continue to relate it back to this main device, right? Your computer. Yeah. And so I think it's going to be good for us to talk about the computer and options and directions that people can go, because things are changing, options are changing, and that decision tree is not the same as it used to be. So,
well, we are going to talk about computer devices. So you basically, the idea, you walk into a electronics store, you walk into even nowadays department store, and you're in the mood to buy some sort of computing device. That's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. And actually for the next few deep dive episodes as well, it's going to be all about the actual computer, your options, your choices. What are some things to keep in mind when you're making decisions on what type of device you want to be using or devices? And so that's what we're going to do. Let's just kind of talk about those actual types of computers during today's episode, Brian.
Yeah. I think it's good. And maybe taking it from the perspective of you potentially may be buying a new device soon. I think you mentioned earlier, you've got a child that's going to college this fall. So you've got somebody that might need a new device that their needs are totally different than what your needs are, and trying to understand what those devices and different form factors can be useful for. And so I think this is going to be fun. It's gonna be good.
Good. Well, let's go ahead and get into it then. So let's start talking about some of these. We call them form factors. Basically, we're saying kind of the actual size and makeup and how this device is kind of made. And there's really more or less four types we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into them, Brian. The first one we're going to talk about is the probably the most traditional of what you think of with a computer. It is considered a desktop computer. Brian, why is it called a desktop computer?
Well, Alan, I believe that the term desktop probably means because it typically resides on your desk, right?
Oh, so, right.
And, a little misleading, because a lot of those don't, they don't land on your desk. They might be under your desk, but you're going to use them at a desk. Did I pass? Was that what you want to do?
I think we're going to let that fly. Yeah, we're going to let that fly. It's I think common misnomer, it doesn't have to sit on your desk. It could be under your desk. It could be in a closet somewhere. It could be anywhere else. But these are the form factors that are the boxes. They are the big box that is not meant to be portable, meaning the idea is you're going to set this computer somewhere and that's where it's going to live.
Right.
That's where it's going to stay. That's where you interact with it, is in this one location. And it's considered desktop because, of course, it's normally found on kind of an office desk situation. It doesn't have to be, but that's kind of more of the tradition behind it. So, some things to understand about these desktop computers when people are looking at a computer option to choose, some things you should know about desktop computers and what their purpose is really for. You're typically looking at a device that has everything inside of it, with the exception of monitor, keyboard, mouse, maybe a webcam if you have
Hmm.
one of those. For the most part. Now, there are all in one computer desktops where you actually have the screen and maybe the webcam built in to the computer. Those are very, very popular nowadays, more so than before. They're still considered desktop computers. These are not meant to be portable computers you move around. They are sitting on your table, sitting on your desk, and that's where they're going to live. Um, with a desktop computer, you're typically having to buy some of those additional accessories to go with it. The monitor, unless it's an all-in-one, keyboard, mouse, and all of that as well.
Yeah. So, Alan, what is your take on the all-in-one versus kind of individual components? So,
Yeah.
if someone were to say, "Listen, I want to have a setup on at my desk. This is where I do all my work." And I'm choosing between this computer like an iMac or like I think Dell has their own all-in-one that's kind of a nice monitor that has a computer built into it, or going and choosing the processor, the box, and then buying your monitor separately. Do you have a particular preference or leaning in
I do.
terms of which one is better?
I absolutely
What?
do. I do not like the all-in-one computers,
Hmm.
and that is me personally. I get it. I understand the benefits, and believe me, if someone is looking for something with the simplest setup, the simplest purchase option, yeah, an all-in-one computer looks pretty good and makes good sense. My concern is always this: is that if something happens to the screen, something happens to the monitor, you're now down an entire computer. I mean, that entire computer now has to be fixed, repaired, serviced, replaced, whatever it may be, as opposed to having a desktop box that connects to an external monitor. If the monitor goes bad, you go out and get a different monitor or swap it out and you don't lose the computer. So, uh, you know, it, the thing that's always kind of interested me about the all-in-one computers is that these are still meant to be stationary. I mean, they are not meant to be portable where you pick them up and move them around. So I guess I've always felt like if you're going to have a computer sitting on your desk kind of in a permanent situation, what's really the purpose of having it as an all-in-one unless you just really, really are trying to make sure you maximize space on your desk or space around you. But
Right.
that's me. Again, I see the benefit, but I do some audio video work for a group in town that all have iMacs, which are the all-in-one
Mhm.
computers. And that's what they stocked up on a few years ago. And sure enough, I've had to go and physically have them fix two or three of those just in the last year. And they are down a computer when that happens. Um, and that's no good. So
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
concern with it. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you. I mean, I do like the iMac. I've had an iMac before. That's kind of an all-in-one monitor. It's nice. It is nice to kind of have some simplicity where you have one
mhm.
device, you plug it in, you put in a keyboard and mouse, and you're good to go. Um, to me, I'm with you in that I think the ability to maintain, change, upgrade, right? The more you can have some ability to be able to swap something out and say, hey, listen,
Yeah,
I want a better monitor rather than having to buy a whole new computer, right? I'd like to be
yeah,
able to swap that part out. Um,
exactly.
and I think it's there's two things that I think about. One is if you're going to go buy components, that of course can be daunting, right? People say, well, I'm going to go
Mhm.
buy the box itself. I'm going to go buy the monitor. So, well, that's a lot of research you have to do. I would say that in my view of these options, I would say the top option would be if you can put the time in to go and find those individual components that work for you, that are all going to be customizable in the future. Great. The next step down for me is the all-in-one monitor device, just because I think they're usually, or nowadays, they're actually at a pretty high level of performance. I mean, you can get an iMac
Mhm.
that has a
For sure.
really good
Oh
machine.
yeah.
And then I'd say the one below that is when you go and buy a computer that is all it's like a package deal, right? And to me,
Mhm.
it's like when you buy so I do a little bit of photography, but when you buy a kit kit lens
Hmm.
with a camera, they're usually throwing things in and saying, "Hey, we want to make it so that it's easy for you. All these things are included. The keyboard's included, the mouse is included, the monitor's included." And they usually are cutting corners on a lot of those
Yeah,
things because they want you to buy one piece of it and they want to make it easy for you. So that was usually my lowest preference in terms of
agreed.
buying those things, because you're going to end up replacing part of that or having kind of a cheaper component in there. But
Yeah.
if you can put the time and effort in to research and figure out what your component is, go find a monitor that works for you, that works in your space, a keyboard that feels good, which people have very big preferences on, a mouse that works for you, then you've got all
Mhm.
these capabilities. I think that's the way to go.
Well, yeah, and you're right. It is a factor of time and energy and a little bit of research you have to do if you want to go price out and get those individual pieces. You're right. That is my preference, but I definitely understand where there's a need to just get a computer quickly. I just want it to be done, one purchase. I don't want to have to think about anything else with it. And I want to know that it works right out of the box. I don't have to do any hookups. I don't have to do any configurations, whatever. Then you're right. The all-in-ones do make good sense. I totally get why they're popular and why people like
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I do think the caveat to keep in mind is, like you said, upgradability, um, serviceability. If things go wrong with it, are you willing to be out of a computer for however many days it takes to get something fixed or repaired? All that, some things to consider for sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned a negative, obviously, is you don't take this around with you. You don't take it with
Yeah.
you on a trip. You don't take it with you
True.
to the park to go and work on things. So what's the benefit, though? I mean, what's the benefit?
Well,
Why would someone
benefit.
choose
Yeah.
the desktop?
Well, I think the desktop is the biggest benefit. As long as you're comfortable having it in a stationary spot, the biggest benefit is that you're going to probably get for your money
Hmm.
your best performance, your best speed options. You can add more to this computer over time. There's a lot of flexibility with it. So there's a reason why, if you're a professional video gamer, for example, you don't even think about playing on anything other than a really beefy desktop computer that you can add more graphics cards to, you can add more fans to, more memory. There's a reason for that, because that's they want the best performance they can get
Yeah,
out of that. So that is the good thing. I mean, I do think when you got a desktop situation, to know that you can keep adding more memory to it easily. You could add more hard drives to it. You could add additional monitors to it. You could do all these things that you're going to be a little more hard pressed to do with any of the other form factors we're going to talk about. Um, so I do think there's some good use situations for desktops, especially if peak performance, especially on very intensive programs or type of work you want to do, or games, a desktop starts to make some really good sense there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So really, price, performance per price. I mean, for price, right? You're going to have the best
Yeah.
price point for the performance you're going to get, and then I think. Would you say longevity is probably a benefit here as well? I mean, given that
Yeah.
the fact that you can go and change out the memory, you can change out, and you can upgrade certain things over time. It seems like this is the thing that you would buy if you're planning, you don't want to have to buy something new in the future and you're willing to have a stationary computer. This is going to be the least expensive and it's going to be the most customizable and probably going to last you the longest because of those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree. I've seen some desktop computers that are in use and performing great, 10 years
Yep.
later,
Yep.
because you can keep upgrading them. You can keep swapping out parts that aren't working as well. It just, the actual form factor, the actual guts of the computer are still intact and work great for a really, really long time.
Yep.
So, yeah, desktop's great. And I think when we get to later, after we go through these four, we'll kind of explain some different scenarios where a different type of form factor might be a good fit for you. But I definitely think there's an audience still for desktops, even though I will say that I think they've dropped in popularity in favor of some of the other vehicles we're going to talk about in the last several years. But I still think there's a good
Yeah.
application for that desktop computer.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and
Well,
move on to the second one then, Brian. What do we got? We got the laptop.
yeah, the laptop. So we're going to keep getting smaller here, right, as we
Yeah,
go
I guess
along.
so. Mhm.
So the laptop, if we would have done this show 10 years ago, this would be a completely different conversation, right? Usually the
Yeah.
laptop, we would say, all right, you're going to sacrifice performance for
Hmm.
mobility. You can go and take this thing everywhere, but it's not going to be nearly the computer that you would have with a desktop, right?
Yeah.
The processor is going to
Laptops
be
used to,
different, right?
yeah. Laptops were always kind of viewed as more of a, yeah, they're always going to be under performance compared to a desktop computer. It's more of just you want the mobility, so you have to sacrifice speed and
Yep.
performance, and you can't do video editing and graphics and games are not that on there. You're right, and
Right.
that has changed.
And it would it be fair to say that 10, 15 years ago, when the laptops were kind of becoming very popular at that point, that most people that had a laptop, that was their second device. So they
Mm-hmm.
had the desktop that they did their work on. And then, hey, I have a laptop when I'm traveling, when I can go and do other things, but that's not where I'm going to be doing all of my heavy lifting day to day.
Yeah.
And that's really changed, right? I mean, the laptops now are incredibly powerful. They can do a ton of work, and you're not really going to be sacrificing a lot. What you will be well. So let's say the pros. The benefit, mobility, right? That's the reason people do it. Is that function and form factor allows you to throw it in a bag, take it with you, be in different locations where we all tend to be doing work in different locations now. So that obviously is a big key there. And then the fact that now their performance can be a decent level, if not even rivaling what you could get with your desktop. There's still several downsides, though, right?
Sure.
Price, you're going to pay for that form factor still. I think one, it is the all-in-one. I mean, it is the all-in-one that we talked about with an iMac. It's that, but it's that at a much smaller scale, which doesn't mean small means you pay less. It means small that there's more technology that had to put it into a smaller package, and therefore you're
Yeah.
going to be paying for that. So typically, they're going to be more expensive than that desktop of the same level of performance, right?
Yeah, on a even if you take a desktop computer, add a monitor to it, add the keyboard, mouse, and all that, you're still probably going to be paying more with a laptop than you
Right.
would on the desktop in general.
In
Now there
general.
are inexpensive laptops; there are all different levels, but to get the same level of performance in a laptop that you're getting in a desktop, you will be paying more.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and I know it goes a little contrary to what I was just describing about the all-in-one computers. How I don't like the fact that the monitor's built in, and if the monitor goes bad, the whole thing has to be serviced. It's the same with a laptop, more or less. There are a couple of differences in that a laptop, especially nowadays, are a lot more expandable than I think they used to be, with ports, and you can attach second monitors and you can attach external devices to it. So even if my laptop screen broke, if the computer still works, I can still hook it up to an actual external monitor and still use it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a little bit, I mean, it's similar to that all-in-one issue I mentioned, but the portability outweighs it. I mean, the fact that it is portable, I can go anywhere with this, and I've still got great performance, to me outweighs the risk of it being basically an all-in-one form factor. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. The thing is, people ask sometimes, Brian, ask me why laptops can't perform or didn't used to be able to perform as much as the desktop could. And it all comes down to the idea of, really of heat.
Heat. Yeah.
How hot and fast can your processors run that are powering your computer? And if you just think about it, desktop, you've got a lot of space. You've got a big open case with that processor sitting on there. There's normally a lot of space around it. You've got fans that are running inside that desktop computer, circulating air. So you can make the processor run faster, which means it's going to be hotter and not get overheated. Laptops, you're cramming a lot of stuff into a really, really small place. So that used to be the issue, is that you just could not get the processors to run as fast or to be as powerful because there's no way to control the heat on them. That is not as much of an issue nowadays. I mean, you still will notice laptops, if you're really working them, will get hot. They will get
Yep.
a little toasty, but they're a lot better now at managing power consumption and heat on the laptops than they had been in the past, which
Yeah.
is
Well,
allowing us to really see some great performance on these laptops now.
well, I mean, memory is not spinning anymore, right? The spinning
True.
drives,
Yeah.
which aren't continuing to
Mhm.
move. And you mentioned the heat just from processing, but also the laptop's got a battery in there, right? It's got a
True.
jam
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
in there, and that often will also limit the processing speed that it was able to do, is that you're working on battery power as opposed to a constant direct power on a desktop. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I still think there's a difference, right? Even though that it's
A little bit.
minimal
Yeah.
now, it is
Hmm.
minimal, and it's not worth really making a big distinction out of it. But if you're someone who runs a lot of very high intensive applications, maybe you do a lot of video editing, you may find that that is going to limit you a little bit to be on a laptop. They can do it. They're fast enough to do it. Heck, we'll talk about a tablet in a minute. They can do it because they've gotten pretty strong with some of their processing speed. But if you have the capability to be at a desktop and have the ability to put in new processors and new expandable drives, and start to really get that, you're going to have a higher end in terms of your capabilities. I mean, so the
Yeah.
other things
Yeah.
to consider with laptops, Alan, is because you are buying this all in one, and you're using it to travel, to be mobile, to go sit on the couch, to be able to work in different parts of your house. Screen size, you're going to be somewhat limited because you want the mobility. So you've got something you're going to have to squint for, potentially. Portability is great, but weight of the laptop is a consideration. There are some laptops that are much lighter, but the lighter they are, the probably the less they're able to do because there's less packed into them.
Sure.
Keyboard, from Mac people, keyboard has become a major concern over the
Yeah.
last 5 years. The keyboards trying to get smaller and smaller as a form factor means that you lose a little bit in terms of the functionality of the keyboard. So there's lots of considerations. Even if you're looking at laptops and say, I want a laptop, there's lots of variability there across those lines that you're going to need to test drive, right, and try to figure out what works for
Yeah.
you. So
Well, and I think it's important, Brian, as we're talking about laptops, just to make sure that there is a little bit of a distinction. You're right. There are different levels, there's different price ranges, there's different processing power and capabilities. But there's actually a whole nother sub level of laptops that a lot of times, if you go into the store now, you will see. And I think it's important that we mention, because what we're seeing is that the proliferation of what used to be called netbooks. I think they kind of did away with that term in that kind of form factor, which was like super ultra small laptops and super low powered, meant to really be as inexpensive as possible. Those have kind of gotten replaced. You don't see as much of those anymore. And instead, you're seeing a lot more of the Chromebooks, which they are laptops. I mean, if you look at them from the outside, many of them look very, very similar to a regular laptop, but they are going to be geared differently. They are meant for accessing the internet pretty much exclusively.
mhm.
And that's really what they distinguish themselves with. So you'll find those laptops will be a lot less expensive and will look really enticing. I think it's just important for people to know when they're looking at laptops that there are different flavors, and that Chromebook level, we're going to talk about in a next deep dive episode when we talk about operating systems, kind of the actual system you use when you boot up a computer and you're actually doing your work. Um, in Chrome, the whole Chromebook is a very different ecosystem that we'll talk about. So I think it's just important to note that there is a distinction. So I just didn't want anybody to go into a store and see a $299 laptop and think, oh, this is going to give me everything I need to do. I can do video editing. I can do this and that. And
Right.
it's not the case.
No,
So
no.
traditionally, the laptops we're talking about that are more true full laptops, I mean, what, on the very, very low end, you might be able to find some for
Yeah.
$700,
Yeah.
$700, and then going all the way up to, several $1,000s for
Yep.
some really high end ones. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
no, that's a good thing to keep in mind, right? That
yeah,
once if you're considering that, I would certainly suggest listening to our next episode where we talk about the operating system, because
yeah,
you're right, there's a major distinction. Now, I'm one of those that actually believes the computer needs to move towards that
mhm,
um,
sure,
that
that kind of model.
idea,
Yeah,
right? Kind of to have some of your processing outside of the device, but right now you need to make sure what you're getting into. Yeah, you need to know what that
yeah,
it's going to actually do and not do for you. Well, let's
cool.
get even smaller, right? Let's
All right.
go. What I would say is probably maybe the biggest change if we were going to do this same episode 10 years
Mhm.
ago. Um, would be this one and the next two, right? The smaller form factors and how much stronger they've gotten. So let's talk about the tablet. The tablet
Yeah.
is a really, really popular uh, form factor for people that want something ultra portable, and they want something kind of it's almost like the all in one, but it's the all in one for portability,
Mhm.
where there really are. I mean, I don't. We didn't talk about this beforehand, Al, but to me, this is the most stress free form factor that you can have, especially of the ones we mentioned already. If you're going to buy
Mhm.
something that you want it all put together and not have to worry so much about it, there's not a whole lot of tinkering that you do. There's not a whole lot you can do to go wrong with it. It's made to throw in your bag. It's made to, toss across the room, and it's made to restart, and everything becomes, fresh again. It's the tablet. So let's talk a little bit about the tablet, Alan. What are your thoughts right now on the use of a tablet, and kind of
Mhm.
pros and cons, considerations?
Well, to me, the tablet's probably the most controversial of these form
Mhm.
factors because it's the one that has gone through the most kind of evolving over the last maybe 5 years. I remember the concept of a tablet computer many, many years ago, before the iPad, before some of these more mainstream ones.
Yeah, you're
And
so
it was
old.
kind of the whole what
You're so
I'm so
old.
old. I know. It was
Back
kind of the
in the
holy.
day.
It was. It used to be the holy grail. It was kind of this idea of like, oh wow, if you could just walk around your house and sit on your couch and you got a screen that you could touch and you can
Yep.
operate computers on that. It was kind of this magical idea when it first came out, and I think what we saw with early tablets, even the early iPads that came out, they were a really good. I call them a consumption device, meaning if you just want to watch or read things, they're perfect for that. I want to watch a video on YouTube. I want to read an email. I want to read a news article. I want to read Facebook post. They're great. They were great for that. But the issue was always, and the controversy around it was, but are they really a computer replacement? Can you
Right.
truly say, I'm not going to have a computer. I'm just going to have a tablet and I'm going to get everything done I need to. I will say they have become much, much closer to that computer replacement. Um, I'm just speaking about the latest iPad in particular, that I've had experience with. If you attach a keyboard to it, um, you can get some serious work done on it. I mean, it's you can do some graphic design, you can do some video editing, you can do some heavy spreadsheet processing if you choose to. Me personally, it's still not quite there yet. It's still got a little ways to go before it becomes a true replacement. But for a large swath of the people looking at doing some computing, I think the tablet would work fine.
Yeah.
Um, it's just like the other methods we've talked about. It's just understanding what the trade offs are. It's understanding what you may have some limitations with if you go this route exclusively.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
wouldn't you
because
say right now more people? I think more people have the tablet as a complementary device
yes. Yes.
than as a singular device. In other words, I have a desktop or I have a laptop and I use that when I'm doing real work. But if I just want to kick back and watch and read something, I'm using my iPad.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the way most people would use it now. I think some younger people, being an educator, I'm starting to see more and more students now that will say, "I don't have a computer, I have a phone, or I
Mhm.
have a tablet, and I can
Yeah.
do those things." And they're actually, typing papers out on that, which just baffles me that you can do that. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I think they're. I mean, you're right. They're strong enough, right? For 90% of the population, the tablets these days they're powerful enough to do the work you want to do. It's a different
Yeah.
form factor for you to be able to do that work, right? If you're someone who wants to interact with the screen, it's really all about touch, right? That's the whole objective. You can do peripherals now, which I think has opened up a whole lot of opportunity for people to be able to put a mouse or to potentially have a keyboard. But I was thinking about this, Alan. That if someone was really trying to set up their computer um, usage and try to figure out what devices they want, it seems like the right now the tablet is a great complementary device to a desktop. And
Oh
if
yeah.
someone
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
listen, I've got a
Absolutely.
desktop, so I don't have the mobility at all, but I have less money put into it. So I have a better machine that I can do my work on, but I still want to be able to go around and, as you said, consume, check email, browse, shop, those sorts of things in other parts of my house. Then the
Yeah.
tablet is great. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to have a desktop and a laptop for most people. And it probably doesn't
True.
make a lot of sense to have a laptop and a tablet for most people if you're doing it
Mhm.
for portability. But the two
Yeah.
ends of the spectrum, I think, really are kind of a nice complement to each other right now.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think again, I'm all in favor of tablets as complementary devices, but I do see that there's a lot of opportunities where somebody could choose to just go on a tablet and
Hmm.
probably satisfy 95% of the kind of things that they may be looking to do.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a big fan of a tablet as a complementary device, but again, I realize we'll talk about our own personal
Yeah.
situations
Yeah.
a little bit later and kind of explain why we feel that way. But I the tablet has grown up. It is definitely I mean, I have an iPad Pro. I just tried hooking up a mouse to it a few
Hmm.
weeks ago when a couple months ago they introduced that latest update that now allow you to plug up an external mouse and use it. And it kind of blew my mind. I mean, at that point I started actually see myself using it more as a productivity device. I'm still not there yet. I mean, to me, the tablet is still meant for extreme convenience and portability, but still not there for I want to build, work on, develop, create things, and do some heavy communication task. But it's getting
Alan,
closer.
let me
It is
ask you
really
on that
getting
though.
closer.
Really
Yeah.
quick though, let me ask you why. So
Hmm.
you're not
Yeah.
there. Is it because of interface? Is it because of the way that the interface is done and you're used to a, like I am, multiple windows up on a machine to kind of
Yeah.
drag things, which is really hard to do on a tablet?
Listen, Brian, I'll cop to it. I think most of my hangups with using a tablet as a primary device are from habit and from what we're used to than anything. I still use keyboard and mouse. I'm still a keyboard and mouse guy, and I can't get rid of that mentality. Even a keyboard and trackpad on a laptop. That is just my my hands are geared to work that way. They are not geared to work
Yeah.
on a tablet
Touch.
with touch and trying to do manipulation of text or spreadsheets or anything else like that. And then there's also the file system. Again, I don't want to get too deep on this, but just how files can be managed and organized and folders
Yeah.
and how you organize your desktop. You don't really have that flexibility on a lot of tablets. Now, I will say one thing we didn't really mention with the tablet is that, some of the tablets out there are running a very limited operating system, meaning a mobile operating system, kind of like the iPad, or it's running the exact same kind of system that the iPhone is running,
Hmm.
where it's the big buttons on your home screen. And that's kind of the
Yeah.
only option you've
Got
got
an
for setting.
Android tablet, run the same thing,
Yep.
right? Hmm.
Same thing. But now Windows has tablets,
Yep.
their Surface line of tablets that are full Windows computers and in a tablet form. And to me, that's pretty freaking cool. That's nice.
Yep.
That kind of gives you the best of both worlds. I can have a touchscreen tablet for consumption, but if I really want to set it down, I've got a full Windows operating system I can do things on. So the tablet hang up for me, Brian, is more habit. I'm a creature of habit and I have certain ways I like to work and multiple windows, multiple screens up. The iPad doesn't do that for me. But I'm not saying that tablets can't do it in general. I'm just saying the ones I prefer don't, and it's hard for me to get past that kind of what I'm used to. I think
Yeah.
that's the case with a lot of people, probably our ages and above. It's just we can't think of working with touchscreen on a screen and trying to be as productive as we normally are.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm gonna. I know I would need to move on here, but I do want to say one of the things that a dream I have is for a device to become more convertible, right? And of course, that's what the
Mhm.
Surface does, I think, pretty well, right? Is like you flip it around and you could use the keyboard, and you flip it around, you can do a different thing with it. What I'd love to see though is a tablet that, when I am not docked on the tablet, it switches to a mobile interface, touch
Yeah.
buttons, big buttons. You're kind of making it easy, and then the moment you click it down onto a dock, it switches to the desktop interface where it looks like your actual Windows or Mac desktop software. And it just flips a switch and says, okay, you're ready to work now. And you've got a mouse, no longer touching the screen. Let's go. Right. And then you click it off. Great. Now you're traveling and be ready to touch the screen. And it's super simple. I would love for them to get to that point where they could have this clean kind of swap, because the processors can do it. It's not an issue of that. It's really an issue of the companies deciding that they want you to have it all instead of having to have multiple devices, right?
I don't know if it's coming across over the video conference or not, Brian, but there's a little tear running down my cheek as I think about this idea. Because I'm with you.
Right?
I love it. I would absolutely love it. Because right now, again, I'm getting ahead, but right now I'm carrying two devices. I'll explain what those are a little later and why. But believe me, if I could get away with one,
yep,
we would totally do it. Absolutely, yep. I'm with you on that. Okay. Yeah. Let's go and talk about this fourth form factor, Brian. We have gotten to the smallest version we can possibly get. The phone.
Which, by the way, again, 10 years ago, I would have thought we would have been crazy to include this as one of the form factors, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, 20 years. Let's say 20 years ago, right? But certainly,
sure. But I mean, really, I think honestly, with the advent of the iPhone, I think even early versions of the iPhone, I still would not consider them computers. I still think they're more primarily phones. But I really think the last 10 years, we have seen the phone become a computing platform for a lot of people. There's many people, many more people still use it as a supplemental device. I've got a computer, but my phone is my portable device I go around with. But like you said, students, younger people, sometimes the phone is all they have, and they can get so much of their stuff done on the phone, which still blows my mind. But you know what? Hey, if it works for people, that's great. So what do you get with the phone? How can the phone be a computing platform, Brian? Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one, it's gotten a lot more powerful than they used to be, right? You can do a lot more work with them. The processors are better. It's a constant connection to the internet, or at least for most people, even on the go. You're not hooking from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi. You're getting data just as you walk around. So the fact that you're not having to even designate when work is happening, that work is, can progressively happen. You can check your email as you're walking around, right? It makes it so that you're so much more comfortable with this device. And now the way people see having more and more uses, for it day to day, obviously people are not putting them aside at all. They're taking them wherever they go. So that makes it kind of the ideal computer, right? It is that it's always with you. But I think that what's really kind of the key is that they started making things like text easier to get into. They're starting to make it so that the apps that it would run can then sync back with everything else that you're going to do elsewhere. This cloud storage has made a big deal there, and that's of course what led to the tablet being very helpful as well. But I think size they've gotten bigger, so therefore it's no longer most of the devices are no longer a one-hand input device, which is all it needed to be previously. I need one hand, put a number in, put it up to my head. Now, two hands, larger device, larger screen, and all of a sudden it makes it. I think that honestly, I think that's where things are. I hadn't really thought about it that way until now, but the moment things became two hands, it means work can be done. When something's one-handed, it kind of feels like it's not work. It feels like it's more, ease to interact with something, that. Right?
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that there's been some times back before I had my tablet, I was on the road and I didn't have my laptop with me, or I couldn't get my laptop hooked up, or just needed to do something. An emergency was going on. I had to write some emails and send some files and attach some other files to another document. And I did it all from a phone. Yep. And I'm not going to say it was easy. I mean, it was still a little more painful than I'd like for it to be, but I got it done and it worked. And, from the other person on the other end has no idea I was doing all of that from a phone. The fact that it could be done is pretty amazing. So yes, I can see it happening. The biggest trade-off you've got, the biggest reason why I think the phone is still just kind of has to be more of that fringe computing device, it's still just screen size. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like until you can get it big enough to type a document on it comfortably with an external keyboard hooked up to the phone, for example, until that happens, it's still going to be a very much a limited work use device in my mind. Even a student of yours writing a paper, I can't even imagine writing a paper on a phone.
No,
Um,
crazy.
so how do they go about doing that? That's the question mark there. Now, once they've written the paper, if they want to be able to send it and respond to it and make notes on it and all that, yeah, phone could be great for all that. But I just think until the phone is always going to be limited in my mind by the screen size. And I don't think the screen size is ever going to get any bigger than what we've got now without it venturing into tablet territory where it loses the functionalities of a phone and becomes just
Yeah.
true tablet. So,
Although they are, you can see now they're trying to do these things, right? The foldable phones, to where you've got two halves of a phone that you eventually use. I mean, they're trying to figure out ways to make it so that they can get the tweeners, right? The people that are not really certain they want to, have a
yeah,
different device. But I I would say, yeah, you're totally right. It's the screen size, and to me, it's typing. It really
yep.
comes down
That's
to
really it.
typing, right?
It's
That
because
if
there's
I'm
still
going to sit
no
and type,
alternative.
yeah,
Voice recognition is still not to a point where you could write an essay, you could write an article, you could write a book report just by dictating it. I still don't think we're there yet, and I don't think that works from a work standpoint. Now, could it be there in a few years where you truly could just write and edit with your voice? Yeah, and then I think we're definitely going in the right direction. But I agree with you. It's screen size and it's writing. That's
yeah,
to me the biggest challenge is to make it a true work device, computing device.
yep, yep,
Now, Brian, if I can go back to your dream situation with the tablet,
hmm,
I've kind of always felt the same way about the phone. See,
yeah,
here was my dream situation: is your phone is your portable computing life, and you use it as a phone when you're just not connected to something. But if you were to bring it to a dock of some sort, you snap it in. Then all of a sudden you have full desktop interface with it, but everything that you brought with you to that phone is there. So then at that point, docks become universal. You could go to a dock at a hotel, you could go to
mhm,
a dock at a restaurant, you could go to a dock at a friend's house, and all of your computing life is there from your phone because the phones are powerful enough to do that. It's just the connectivity and getting them hooked up to a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse and all that is a challenge and takes a lot more work to do. But if there was a way to do that, whether it's a tablet or phone or both, this idea of a portable device that can turn into a desktop situation at any location,
yeah,
it could be really cool. But
yeah. Well, like we said, the issue is not the processor, right?
yeah,
And for most tasks, right, the processor in the phone is strong enough to do a lot of what we want to do. As you said, the issue is screen size and keyboard, right?
yep, yep,
So if I could walk up to, I mean, I kind of have that same utopian idea as well, where you have the phone in your pocket, you walk up to, let's say you walk to a store, and they have little stations around every once in a while, everywhere, maybe even just on the wall, where it's like, hey, I walk up and I put my fingerprint up there, and look at that, my computer is showing up on the wall there, so that I can
yep,
sort through and find something, do a quick search on some shopping. Those are things that I wouldn't necessarily have to have a monitor with me all the time. So you're
right,
getting the access to the bigger screen size, and then the text input. I mean, some of that is just the way we were raised, right?
yeah,
We all
I
know
get it, yeah,
we type with all 10 fingers, right?
yep,
Whereas the current young people, right, they can type
yes,
with
young ones,
2 fingers, and
yeah,
that's all they need, and they can type really fast with that way as well. So I agree with you. I think that's where things need to go. You've got a processor in your pocket or in your pocketbook, and then you just interact with a shell, other places, and I think that
yep,
can be really beneficial. That's kind
yeah,
of what we're doing in a way with right now. Again, we'll get to our stuff in a second, but plugging in a laptop to make it a desktop, we
hmm
kind of treat
hmm
that same way. It's like, hey, that's my processor. I'm going to go
yep.
put it onto other form factors, and
Well, I think, what we're basically is kind of seeing with these form factors, Brian, is it's almost like, and I can think just as far as how history is moving along with them, the desktop is becoming a little more antiquated. It's becoming just more focused on niche uses than general purpose uses. Um, where the laptops are still very much the rage right now. I think we're seeing a lot more people opting to go laptops because costs are a little better on laptops than they have been in the past. And obviously the capabilities are higher. Tablets are probably the fastest emerging as a true, standalone computing device, although there's still some caveats to it in general. The phone, I still think has got quite a ways before it becomes your primary computing device or one I would recommend. But it's a great supplemental device and for doing some heavy computing. So it's kind of where those four are, I guess, in
Yeah.
general. And I think, the trends and times are moving. I could see more and more moving to the tablet over time with people choosing that as their device and the phones becoming even more powerful to where that's definitely the future. But right now, I think if I had to say of the four, the laptop's still probably the one more people are opting to go with for a true computing device than anything else.
So to summarize, we are
Yes.
old and
Yes, we are.
we do not
Yes.
understand the young people. Is that what you were
The
saying?
whippersnappers. Yeah. We want them to get off our yard and take their stinking two finger typing with them.
That's right.
All right.
Learn to type. Use all 10 fingers. Yes.
With that, let's take a quick little break, Brian. When we come back, I'd like for us to kind of go through these talk about just our personal preferences when it comes to computing devices, what we're using, why, and then we can just kind of explore more of these better types of people that might benefit from these different types of
Yeah.
devices,
Sounds
where
good.
some good use case applications are. So you're listening to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv network, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv network. And Alan and Brian Jackson here talking about computers, talking about computing devices, form factors, types of computers that you may find yourself looking at if you're in the market to invest in a new one anytime soon. We spent the first half of the show talking about the four types of form factors, the desktop, laptop, tablet, and phone. Brian, let's we've kind of teased it all along, but let's talk about what we actually have and why. And we're not saying that what we have is what we think everybody should have. Okay, I think there are many, many different examples and setups and scenarios that people are going to have different needs. But let's talk about what you and I have and why. So, Brian,
Yeah.
what would I find on your desk or in your bag that you use for computing right now?
Okay, let me first of all say what I have and what I use are really two different things. So I'm going to talk more
Okay.
about what I use
Okay.
because, as I know you do, I have had desktops. I still have a desktop machine that I use for kind of storage and things. But in terms of what I use a laptop. I have a
Okay.
laptop that I will take to the office and plug into an external monitor and use
Okay.
as a desktop. So I have an external keyboard, external mouse, and I take the laptop, put it in my bag, bring it home, and use it at home with an external monitor, with an external keyboard, with an external mouse. And then if I need to, be able to go outside and want to work on the back porch or in another room, I have the laptop that I can unplug and do that. I do have obviously I have a phone, and the things I'll do with the phone is to check email on the go. That's my first step to computing. At that point, is I'll check email and then decide, do I need to go and actually send a long email, and if so, I'm going to go get my computer and do that. I do have a tablet, more for um, more for exploring the possibilities of it. I had hoped that a tablet could be my computer, that I could move towards that. And, initially I wanted to have the desktop and I wanted a tablet. Like I mentioned earlier, I thought that would have been the great way to have something that I could work, do heavy lifting on, and then have a tablet for other things. Basically, the tablet has become the consumption device where if I'm riding my stationary bike in my garage, that's where my tablet is, that I can consume TV shows while I'm riding. Things that I don't have to worry about sweat bothering a keyboard. I don't have to worry about, even if it were to fall, it's a pretty solid device. And then I would say if I'm traveling, that I have gotten to the point where, so my wife and I go camping a lot, and we'll do some long road trips, that I'll throw the tablet will be my way, and I'll have a little keyboard that goes along with it, kind of like a little case with a keyboard built in. So I know if I need to sit down and type out a long email, a work document, I can do it. I
Yeah.
would not want to do a lot of it the way it's set up right now, but I have the ability to do that. So unfortunately, I'm one of those that has lots of form factors, and they each have individual usage. If you forced me and said, Brian, you can only have your phone and one other thing, it would be the laptop.
Yeah.
All right, because
Okay.
I think I can do everything that I need to do with that. So that's my scenario.
Well, it's a small wonder we're brothers, because I have the exact same setup. I mean, seriously, it is
Yeah.
exactly the same.
Yep.
I have a home office. I have a office, and I have an external keyboard, mouse, and monitor at both locations. I actually have the exact same monitor, keyboard, and mouse at both locations. They're laid out exactly the same. The laptop is what I move from place to place with, and that is my computing device. Um, I have the phone, obviously, and of course, the phone is the phone. The phone's great, but I don't do a lot of work on it. But it is my connection device. It is my, hey, I want to check email. I want to respond quickly to emails. I want to check news. I want to check whatever weather or anything else I need. I bought into the tablet side of things late in the game. I was just at the tablet for quite a while. I'll admit, when the iPad first came out and I looked at it, and it just was a giant iPhone in my head with the same exact interface, the same exact kind of functionality, just bigger. I just wasn't interested. And I thought, I've got a laptop. I don't need a tablet. I'm good with the laptop. Um, I broke down. Honestly, I built up enough points on an American Express account to where I could actually splurge and buy myself a treat one year. And so I got to the point saying, you know what, the iPad Pro seems to be kind of the model now where I could actually do some work on this thing. So I did break down and get the iPad. But I still just use it as a consumption device, just like you said.
Yeah.
The only thing the iPad has really done that has really benefited me in a day-to-day work environment, as opposed to just reading and watching things, is I do take notes on the
Yeah.
iPad. I take
Yep.
notes on the iPad religiously. So that is my note input device for meetings, whether it's handwriting or typing. Either way, I put it in the iPad. And that's really what I use it for. I do it, take it to meetings. I use it for taking notes. I may show things in meetings off the iPad. And then when I'm home or relaxing, it is my read the news, read articles, watch some things, whatever it may be. That's kind of where I am with it. So the iPad doesn't even come out of my bag when I'm in my office or my home office. It's truly
Mm-hmm.
like I'm out and around the house or I'm in a meeting somewhere. And that's when I take the iPad with me. So,
Yeah.
so it sounds like we're in about a exact same situation as far
Yeah.
as our equipment goes. Yeah.
No, and you're right. And I didn't even think for a minute. The ability to be able to write on the tablet is
Yeah.
beneficial. We talked about
Absolutely.
that earlier when we went in our going paperless series, and I grade papers on the iPad to be able to still write on things.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Let me ask you though, real quick, Alan, if you had to go right now to a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
so you're saying you don't even think twice about it, you grab your iPad to go take notes,
Yeah.
or okay, because sometimes I'm still struggling, like iPad, laptop. They're both taking pretty much the same space in my hand when I'm going to this meeting. One's going to be an option
Yeah.
to do a lot more. So I guess the question is, do you want to be casual with your meeting where you are kind of
That's me.
handwriting, or do you want to have formal where you're sitting behind a computer, right?
Well, now if I'm in a meeting where I know I'm going to have to show spreadsheets and show a presentation and do other things on a screen or kind of whatever, then I'll take my laptop and I'll
Okay.
actually let that be my device. But if I'm just going to a meeting to talk and listen and take notes, I will absolutely just take my iPad.
Okay.
I treat that as my input device, and I know that I use things that we've talked about in previous episodes to sync, notes and other things together. So when I come back to my workstation laptop, everything's there and I don't have to worry about it. So Yeah, I've gotten to the point where I don't take a laptop to a meeting unless I know it's something where I'm going to be asked to show documents and files and kind of bring up a whole lot of different things, or doing anything else higher end at that meeting. So,
So,
um,
Alan, we both do the same thing for the most part. Is there anything in your workflow right now, though, that is frustrating to you? Like, do you look at it and say, "Oh, gosh, you know what? That part always gets me annoyed." And I have one, and I think you're going to agree with it. But
well, let me hear yours, because maybe you'll,
well,
maybe you'll jog my memory.
yeah. Well, the one thing that's frustrating with my workflow right now is dongles. Is
Oh, yeah,
the
okay,
ability to say, listen, if I'm working laptop and the connections of those things, whether it coming home, having to figure out a way to dock in, or going and wanting to use it with other places and
yeah,
situations,
no, you're right.
that's something to keep in mind for people that if you're looking at a laptop, do do be aware of form factor, size, all of that, but also be aware of connections and what am I going to do with
Mhm.
it? Am I someone who only wants to work on this screen and on this keyboard? Great. But if you're talking about plugging into other things, laptops have gotten to a very frustrating part for a frustrating place
Yes.
for me to where they say we're going to make things so small that we have to create our own connections to fit into those small form factors. And now you need dongles in order to connect what you already had to this device. So that to me is still the biggest
Oh,
frustration.
it's no, you're right. I mean, as soon as you said it, that's it. That dongles are still the bane of my existence right now. And I have a small bag in my work bag that goes with me everywhere I go. And it is a bag full of dongles, because it's not only just for me. Unfortunately, I have to have dongles, which will tease you a little bit when we get to our suggestions at the end of
Yep.
the episode. Mine is going to be dongle related. Um, but even going to places where I'm meeting with people and they're trying to hook up to a projector, or they're trying to do something else, I've got to constantly have dongles available to be the savior in those situations and say, oh, you're trying to hook your laptop up to this. Okay, well, you're going to need this dongle. So here you go. And I've got it. Um, that's it's tough. It's really, really
Yeah.
tough. And,
Yep.
it's something you don't have to worry about with a tablet or phone as much. Unless you want to do higher end things with those devices. Like I said, I hooked up my iPad to a mouse just to see how that worked. And it was pretty cool, but it had to be a USB-C connection on my iPad Pro, and I didn't have a mouse that was a USB-C, so I needed a dongle to go from a regular USB to that. So again, dongles are still going to be evident anytime you want to have more expandability or do more things on your device than what comes with its stock.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it is a challenge. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a shifting standard. Uh, USB was the big one for a while, and then now USB-C seems to be the one taking the lead, but just not enough things out there have USB-C connections. So you need these adapters and dongles to do it.
Yep.
So, yep,
Yep.
you're right. It's a pain. It's a
Yeah.
big problem. Something to keep in mind.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we mentioned. Let's talk about some examples really quick, Alan. So we've talked about each of these four form factors. Now let's maybe give our suggestions. So, what kind of person should
Mhm.
purchase a desktop? Maybe let's think about it that way. So who's
Yeah.
the person that should look and say, nope, desktop's the way I should do that?
Here's my suggestion. I'll hear if you echo some of the same ones. I think someone who has a very specific type of work that they're doing that needs the greatest horsepower, processing speed, and all, and they have a designated place they do that work. So, for example, we have an editing studio here in our building. There is a desktop computer sitting in there, because if you're going to go in there to record and edit and all audio, you're doing it from that spot, and it needs to be a very high powered machine to do it. So that's a great example of someone who has a work job that's a very focused, more intensive job that has to be done in one place. That's great. That's a good example for it. Um, Gamers, people who are
Yep.
really heavy video gamers, I think desktop is still the best way to go. You're just not going to get great game performance off a laptop. I mean, you get good, but if you're really somebody who's going for the highest frame rates and greatest amount of detail graphics wise, you're still going to get your better bang for a buck with a desktop. Um, I'm having a hard time, Brian, thinking of a recommendation of somebody a desktop in a home environment. Are
Mm.
you have a thought
Well,
of somebody?
so I was gonna, yeah, I was gonna ask you because what if you're a family with multiple kids and you would like to have a computer that
Mhm.
can be used by all. So I could see the convenience of saying, oh, you know what, we've got a laptop and it can be passed around. Who's going to use it? But that's a nightmare, right? With kids, I would imagine.
Yes,
I don't have kids, but I would imagine that
it can be. Yeah.
people taking it and saying, I want to use it in my room, whatever. I've got a friend. We have a friend who recently just bought an iMac for his house because he
Mhm.
wanted one
Mhm.
place where all of his kids could go and do work and say, "This is a
Yep,
work spot. This is where you do your homework. This is whatever." And
that's
we
good.
know that then there's going to be storage, file storage, all of that stuff. So I could see that as being a
Yeah,
place. Now
that
that's
does
not
make
the
good
only
sense.
computer he has. So it's another important piece is that there are multiple other devices in there, but that being kind of the um, home base basically for work. I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there's a reason why you need to have somebody or members of your family or you yourself designated to one spot, and you
Yep.
want to have that more control over that one spot, and you need to make sure you've got a good functioning computer ready, then a desktop makes great sense.
Yep.
You could almost argue too, Brian, if you're somebody that has to kind of force yourself to make sure you're only working when it's time to work, and when you're not
Yep.
working, you don't want to be working, then maybe a desktop location to say, look, when I go to my home office or a remote office, that's my work location. And I don't want to do any of that stuff out of that location. So
Yep.
maybe it's a way of kind of psychologically forcing yourself to only do certain type of work in one spot. If you had a laptop, the temptation is you take it with you. You can do your work everywhere else.
Hmm.
If you're someone who really wants to be very regimented about that, a desktop could be a good way of kind of forcing you into that kind of mentality. Um, yeah, but other than I think the family example is a good one, Brian. Yes, I have seen that in some families. We had that in our family for a while when my kids were really young. So I totally get that. Outside of that, I'm still struggling with any
Yeah.
other home examples that really are good recommendations. Of course, I know there's going to be unique situations. People have certain needs. I mean, and price is also a factor. If you just don't
Yes.
have a lot of money you want to invest into a computer, a desktop may be the cheapest way to get a computer in your house that just does what you need it to do and nothing else fancy. And you can get by and probably build one, put one together for a couple $100 if you find some
Hmm.
good budget ones somewhere. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
on that note,
desktops,
Alan, what
I just
about
feel more
so
limited.
thinking back to your topic that you got so excited about previously, backup, right? If
Hmm.
someone is actually thinking of, okay, I want to create a scenario where I can have home storage for some of
Yeah,
these other devices from, the phones and the tablets that are going throughout the house here, right? Having a desktop that probably could be upgradable and able to have more storage and also able to last longer, could last you
yeah,
for
sure.
5, 6, 7 years, as being a storage device. Also could do some work, but maybe you have it sitting to the side and don't have a monitor on it unless you really need to. So
Well, I mean, yes, if you have one of these dedicated purpose needs, like a dedicated backup device or a dedicated place to store all your media, movies, music, videos, then I think a desktop computer makes great sense. But I don't see it as, the question is that your actual work device? Is that
right.
your device that you actually get on a daily basis and do anything on? That's more of the question mark for me. I
Yep.
think desktops are great for those more specific dedicated purposes.
Yep.
Um, but I don't necessarily think, it should always double function as your primary computer necessarily. So
Cool.
again, these are our thoughts on it,
Yeah.
recommendations. Again, I know everybody's individual situations are going to be different, and there may be some very unique use cases where it makes better sense. But going to the next one with laptop, I'm still going to say laptops are going to be probably my better recommendation for a lot more situations for people. If you're looking at who should be using these, I mean,
So
I
on
could
that,
just kind of look at you and I, Brian. I mean, we work, we have full-time jobs, and we have a home environment, and we're people that like to do computing work in both locations. We don't shut off our computer world when we leave the office. We like to do some stuff at home, and we work on things at home sometimes. For us, that scenario, I think a laptop is just a no-brainer to me. I mean, it just makes the most sense to have one device that you can take with you, and it can apply in multiple situations and be your consistent computing device throughout those environments.
Yeah. And I might suggest, Alan, I would almost suggest we skip the laptop and say
No,
a
okay.
laptop's going to be what most people do. So we've already talked about kind of the extreme of who might use the
Yeah,
desktop. What about who
yeah.
might use the tablet? Because I think
Okay.
that the laptop's a little bit more self-explanatory, right? But who's the
It is.
person
Yeah.
where we would say the tablet is really the right use case for you?
All right. So here's my thought on it with a tablet. I see two different populations. Talking about it being the primary
The
computing
primary,
device, meaning
right?
it's not a supplemental device like you and I use it for, but truly this is their computer. This is
Yes.
what they do. I think people who don't work for a living, retired, or
Yep.
could be people who just or people who just are at home and don't have a dedicated or a work job that needs computing power at all, or they have a work computer at their office that their company pays for, and that's where they do their work, but
Yes.
they don't have a need to do anything when they come home. When they come
Yep.
home, it's all about home and family, everything else, and they don't need to touch it. In those situations, an iPad, I think, is great, or a tablet in
Hmm.
general. If you're needing to check email, you want to be on social media, you want to watch and read things, and you have the occasional need to maybe respond to an email or make a Facebook post or something that doesn't require heavy typing, but it can be done pretty lightly, especially with video conferencing. If people are on Zoom and doing talking to other people remotely, I think a tablet is your device. I mean, I think you will be able
Agreed.
to get everything done you needed at that point.
Yep.
Um, I think retired people that just want to stay in touch with family and read and watch things, it's perfect.
Hmm.
Um, so really, I think if it, I guess what it boils down to, Brian, is that if you honestly don't need, if you're not going to do anything work related outside of your work environment, outside of your home, outside of your office, I mean, and you don't have any other heavy computing needs beyond that, then you can totally get by with a tablet and be very, very happy, I think, at that point.
Yeah, and I think maybe we're potentially limiting our definition of work, right? I mean, I usually think work means typing, which I don't think is always the case,
True.
right? But
Yeah.
if I was a photographer
Right.
and I needed to do editing, I quite honestly I think editing on a nice large tablet is great because of
It is.
manipulation of it, being able to use a pencil to kind of do actual editing of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
think if that's your job, great. That's kind of an important use case. But the problem is that kind of job also requires a high level of computing power, which typically
Right.
means you probably need a desktop, to be able to do some of that stuff. And then your tablet might be your manipulation device. But I'm totally with you. I have encouraged retired family members to go to a tablet, which they were very
Yep.
resistant on initially,
Mhm.
but now would never go back because it's like, well, gosh, I walk around in my house and I can consume, read articles, I can read my books, all of that, and then if I have to, they go and snap into a lap or a keyboard, and
Yep.
they can
And do
type
some
out an
typing.
email. And it's, I guess, it's really the percentage. How much time are you typing? And how much time are you simply consuming? If it's a very small percentage of time you need to type, then I think it's great because you can always put in a keyboard and type just fine for a short period of time. You just don't want to do that for a long period of time right now.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, I think that's really the situation. Again, there's going to be a lot of variations in those people out there, but I think in general, you know what I would actually recommend somebody do is, I mean, a lot of these devices, I mean, you could even buy them and use them for 30, 60 days and still be able to return them to a lot of major stores. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
really trying to struggle, say, look, can I use a tablet as my main computer? Go get one and
Yep.
just force it and just use it for 30 days. Like really try it out. Can you do everything you need to be doing at home or wherever you are on this device? And if the answer is yes, after 30 some days, then don't return it, keep it. And that becomes your device. If it's not, I think then you start looking backwards at some of the other options we've discussed. But,
Yep. Agreed.
it's interesting how that group that the tablet could accommodate is, I think, growing every year. So,
Hmm. Yep. I think,
yeah.
well, again, I think typing, true structured typing of documents is getting less and less of a need for a lot of people's jobs. I mean, they might be able
Sure.
to simply move documents around instead of actually create new documents, and they could potentially talk and have a
Mhm.
transcription of their talk. So, yeah, I think it's good. I think tablets can be it's a greater population that can use that as their singular device. I think
Agree.
typical work environments probably not, but and then the people, on the same note, who might use their phone as a singular device. I could say the problem is when you're talking about that first group, the retirees, those that aren't doing their work day to day anymore, the screen sizes are so small, right? So that's
Well,
not going to be the way that they necessarily would want to consume. So I think for them, large phones or tablets really does make a lot of sense. So
and one thing we haven't really talked about that I think a lot of people, obviously now, especially at the time of this recording, are finding a lot more use for is the video chatting, video conferencing. You can do it on a phone, but it's not really ideal if you are a family or a couple and you're wanting to talk and be online with others. Trying to do it all through a phone or doing it through a phone is not ideal, not going to be a great experience a lot of times. The tablet is going to be a lot better because you got a bigger screen. That's also another reason I don't always recommend the desktop because as your main computer, because that basically forces you to say, all right, we've got to go get in front of this one computer. Anybody who we want to talk to, we don't have any flexibility. We can't move it around or go to other parts of the house. We're kind of stuck in front of that desktop computer to do our video conferencing or Zoom with people. So tablet makes just great sense if that's something you find yourself doing a lot more of and you want that ultimate flexibility on it.
yeah. Well,
Well,
I think we dominated this one. I think we covered it. Well, let's just say a lot
well,
longer than we had planned. But
Well, we go into each of these topics saying, "Oh, Brian, you and I, this will be like
20
20
minutes.
minutes or so. We can probably knock all this out." And an hour later, we're still going on about it. But if you're still listening to us here talk about these, and we talked about these computer form factors, thank you first off for sticking around and indulging us. Um, you
You
may
are
be
one of those
skipping
people
ahead.
that does not work. I can tell. You have time to listen to all of this.
Well, and it may just be they're waiting because they love the bits, the
Oh,
brothers in
well,
tech
who doesn't?
suggestions.
Who doesn't
It
really?
is kind of the hallmark of the show. It's really what we have to kind of wade through this first hour to get through
Agreed.
is,
Agreed.
is talking about our suggestions. These are the brothers in tech suggestions. Brian and I, every time we get together and record, always have a suggestion, possibly related to the topic or maybe just a broad general suggestion of something to share, something we think that we personally can vouch for and we think is great. Um, Brian, you have a suggestion that is very appropriate for this episode. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about it?
Yeah, I appreciate how you reminded people that we tried to connect to the topic because this one is has very little connection to this topic whatsoever.
Yeah,
So
it really does.
I was trying to figure out, and for me, Ellen, I'm less concerned about connecting to the topic and more about really helping the people out. Okay, that's what
Oh,
I'm all
I
about.
see.
So,
I understand. Okay, gotcha.
um, actually, my bit is something now that I've been working from home a little more. I have found uh, quite a lot of use for and love for that I did not realize that I had access to before. So many of us have Amazon accounts, Amazon Prime accounts, and I think a lot of us don't really understand all the things that come with that account. And one of those
Yeah.
being Amazon Music. And I have kind of recently started using Amazon Music as my music player when I am working from home, and even when I'm kind of out and about with my phone. Amazon Music is great. It's an app that can go on your computer, hence why it's connected to this topic. It can go on your computer. Um, but basically it's kind of like Pandora, right? So you have access to it to where you can stream certain stations that they have. And by the way, the stations I think are great. There's lots of different things that you can search through. And if you find someone that you like, say, stream similar to them, like you would with a Pandora.
Yeah.
And just with the Prime account, though, you can go in and there are certain songs where you can say, save that song, and I'll like to have that in my list of music, and you still have
Hmm.
access to be able to pull that song up later. So, um, without paying anything extra. They do, of course, have their premium version where you can then take music with you and say, I'm going to download that song and be able to have it later. But they've just been super, super happy with using that because I'm someone who doesn't subscribe to any music services. I don't subscribe to
Okay.
Spotify. I don't subscribe to Apple Music. And Pandora was always my go-to. I would just pull it up because I want random music, but good music
Mhm.
in relationship to what my interests are. The problem with Pandora is I started getting a lot of commercials, and I
Yeah.
don't get the commercials with Amazon Music, so you can
Right.
stream these stations. So I would suggest if you haven't looked into that, you probably have a Prime account, and if you do, download Amazon Music app to your computer or to your phone. Try it
Yeah.
out. Check some different stations out. Save the stations so you starts to show up as your preferred stations, like a Pandora would, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's good. So check it out.
That's cool. No, I have played around with Amazon Music before. I like it. I think it's great. And again, you're right. It is nice that it's kind of already built into the Amazon account, so you don't have to go about setting up new services or paying extra money for it. Um, I'm an Apple Music guy. I've mentioned that before, mainly because the family account really works for us with four members in the family that all have different music playlists and styles and things we get into, and all the integration with our phones and tablets and computer. We like it, and I think it's more of a we just started off in that and kind of haven't seen them need to move. But I have played with Amazon Music, and I am really impressed with the stations,
Hmm.
um, how easy it is to add your own music to it, and just it's great. I mean, honestly, if I had to kind of restart today, like just wiped it clean and started fresh, I'd probably hop on Amazon Music and focus on that instead. So.
Yeah.
Um, Good call.
Yep.
Good
Cool.
suggestion. And you're right. It's a lot of people don't realize with an Amazon account, if you're just using it for shipping and ordering things, you need to hop on there and look not only on the movies that you get with your Amazon subscription, Amazon Prime, you get all the new movies and streaming movies for free, but you also get the music, you get access to a photo library where you can
Yep.
store your photos. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with Amazon with
Yep.
your account that you're paying per
Books.
year.
I think they
So
have books and audiobooks and things that you can
yeah.
get for free as well. So yeah, there's
Well,
a lot.
this is the Amazon Prime account, I guess I should say, instead of it can't just be where you just have an account on Amazon to place
Right.
orders. This is the Prime account where you've got it because you want the free shipping
Yeah.
that they give you throughout the year. So, all right. Well, my bit, Brian, is one that's a little more related to something we talked about. Not to say that yours was a bad suggestion. I'm just saying, people listening to the show want to hear something that's a little more, applicable to the topic they just invested
Sure.
an hour listening to. So that's what mine is about. I mentioned, or you mentioned more specifically, dongles before, and our absolute disdain and hate for having to keep up with dongles
Despise them.
and managing that. Yep. So I got so frustrated with dongles and all the adapters I was having to manage and keep up with for all the different computing situations I help manage that I got so happy when I found online on Amazon. So linking it to your suggestion on Amazon, I was searching for an adapter that would go from a traditional USB, meaning USB that you might have on external hard drives or webcams or mice or keyboards or anything like that. Trying to find an adapter that would go from a standard USB to these newer USB C ports that are on latest laptops. Mac laptops, especially, are pretty much all USB C now. I think a lot of more recent Dell and some other computers on the Windows side have also started adopting the USB C port also. So on Amazon, I found after a lot of research, reading reviews, trying to find like a really good fit, I found ones made by a company called Syntech, Syntech. It is a USB C to USB adapter. So it's a small little device, which is what I love about it. They're super tiny and they're only $5 each. So you can get a 2-pack for $9.99. They're super nice and tight. So basically, I got them, and the things that I'm always having to hook up to my laptop, I just went ahead and put one of these adapters on the end of it, and it stays on it. So I have an external hard drive I use for some of my video work, and that stays in my work bag. But whenever I need it, I take it out, plug it into my laptop. It now has a permanent $5 adapter on the end of it. So I never have to worry about trying to find an adapter or a dongle for it. So I've got like 4 or 5 devices that have those little adapters on the end, and they stay on there, and they're super tight. They stay on, they don't slip off. And they look really nice. They're really super easy. And I loved how inexpensive they were. So Syntec USB-C to USB adapter, $5 each. They work Mac or Windows, anywhere that has a USB-C port on the computer. And I highly recommend it. It'll save you a lot of frustration if you just kind of go ahead and invest, 15, $20, whatever you may need to get these adapters, and just go ahead and put them on all the devices that you use most commonly. So you're never having to kind of scramble around finding a dongle or an adapter or having to use some big hub to constantly make it work. This is just a nice, convenient way to do it. So
Nice. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I love how small they are, right? So yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you. If you can put them on and keep them on rather than having to search for them, that's the key. There's nothing more frustrating than getting to a place where you're doing a presentation or you're going to show something. You're like, I would, but you don't have the right connection, right? So
Yep.
yeah, that'd be great.
Exactly.
Excellent.
All right.
Well, thanks for tying
Okay.
it to the topic there. It's good that one of us did.
Well,
So very
I'm
nice.
just following the rules that we set up, months ago when we started the show, but that's okay. I mean, I guess it's okay to vary from the rules occasionally, make exceptions. So, well, this has been Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv. We've been talking about computers, which sounds kind of crazy to be saying, we're a Brothers in Tech technology show, and we're just now getting around to talking about actual computers. But it is a good topic for us to kind of circle back to. We will have some deep dive episodes coming out in the next few weeks where we're going to go a little deeper into this topic on computers in general. Next deep dive, the first one we release, is going to be all about operating systems. So we talked about the computers you can get, but you need to understand that when you get a computer, it has or can have an operating system on it, and that's your Mac, your Windows, and other variations. We're going to talk all about that, pros and cons, some things to keep in mind if you're trying to decide which operating system platform to get into with your computer device. And then we'll have some other deep dives following that to kind of explore even deeper specs,
Yeah.
learning computer specs, and we'll talk about some other creative computing options as well. So, Brian, people have some thoughts, feedback, comments, questions for us. How can they reach out to us?
Yeah. Email us at info@themesh.tv. info@themesh.tv. Tell us your use of computers, what kind of suggestions you might have, what frustrations you might have. We'd be glad to kind of give you some advice as well. But we'd love to hear from you. And specifically, I think we'd love to know what topics people would like to hear from in the future. So give us some ideas of what those future topics might be so that we can get you what you want. So yeah, info@themesh.tv.
Perfect. That's it. Well, this has been Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. We thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some good, useful information that can help you in your family, home technology needs, or maybe working with other family members on their technology needs. And we will look forward to talking to you next time when we have our next deep dive episode. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.